My son destroyed my garden, the one place I found peace. He kicked the flowers and yelled, "I'll take everything you love." I knelt down, tears in my eyes. "You'll see what happens when you touch my soul." That night, as he lay sleeping, I planted a seed of my own. My name is Marlene, I'm 62, and I live just outside Lexington, Kentucky. Been here almost my whole life. This house belonged to my parents, and I took care of it when they passed. Raised my 2 kids here. Buried my husband 2 years ago. This home has seen it all. But it was the garden in the backyard that kept me sane. I started it during chemo, back when my husband was sick. I needed something to keep my hands busy, to keep my mind from going to dark places. I would wake up early, sometimes before the sun, just to dig, plant, water. It became a habit I couldn't let go of, even after he died. There's nothing fancy about it. No expensive setups or landscapers. Just me, some secondhand tools, and a few seed catalogs I ordered by mail. Rows of marigolds, peonies, lilies, and a few tomatoes off to the side. I even had a bird feeder where cardinals liked to perch. It was quiet out there. The only place I didn't feel old and broken. I'd sip my coffee on the bench near the back fence, watch the sun rise, and for a few minutes, everything felt okay. Then there's Jared, my only son. He's 34, used to be a sweet boy. I remember how he'd run barefoot across the lawn, chasing fireflies, always asking questions, always wanting to help in the kitchen. But something in him hardened as he got older. After his divorce 5 years ago, he started drinking more. Got angry all the time. Lost jobs, moved around, never took blame for anything. He says I favored his sister, Michelle, that I took sides, that I never really supported him. I did everything I could. Paid off his car note once, let him move in 3 times, co-signed on a loan I'm still paying off. But nothing was ever enough. He wanted someone to hate, and I was always there. Last week, I was out in the garden like usual. I had just replanted some peonies I'd been nurturing from bulbs. They were finally starting to take root. I was kneeling in the dirt, wearing my old straw hat, hands deep in the soil when I heard his truck pull up. Loud music, engine rattling. I sighed. He didn't even knock. Just came through the side gate like he owned the place. I could hear him slamming things in the kitchen, opening drawers, then the fridge. I wiped my hands on my pants and went inside. "What are you doing here, Jared?" He was already into the beer I kept for guests. Slammed one shut and tossed the empty can on the counter. "You got any cash?" he asked.
No, hello, no epalegi.
"I don't, Jared."
Not right now.
"You said you'd start paying me back." His jaw tightened. He stepped closer, real aggressive. "You always say that. You always got money for your stupid flowers, but not for your son." I didn't answer. I just looked at him. He reeked of sweat and old beer. Then, like a switch flipped, he marched past me, out the back door. I followed him, yelling, "What are you doing?" He didn't answer, just walked straight into my garden, and then he started stomping. He kicked the peonies first, ripped out the lilies with his bare hands, grabbed the trellis and yanked it sideways, snapping the vines clean off. "You care more about this than your own family," he shouted. "I'll take everything you love." I was frozen. I dropped to my knees in the dirt. I remember reaching out to one of the crushed blooms. My hands shook. My vision went blurry. I didn't cry loud. I just sat there, quiet, watching everything I'd built get destroyed. Then I looked up at him. "You'll see what happens when you touch my soul," I said. That's all I could say. He laughed, and walked back inside. Mud on his boots. Flowers on the bottom of his jeans. That night, he passed out on my couch, drunk, shoes still on, mouth open like he didn't have a care in the world. I watched him for a long time. I didn't have hate in my heart. Not then. What I had was something colder.
Still.
Focused. I didn't grab a weapon. I didn't scream. I stood there holding a little paper envelope. A seed packet. Not for flowers. What I was about to plant wouldn't grow in soil.
It would take time.
It would need patience. But it would bloom all the same. I was going to make him feel the same quiet pain he left in me. Not with fists or shouting, but with silence, loss, and the slow unraveling of the things he thought he had left. The next morning he was gone. Left early, didn't say a word. Empty beer cans on the coffee table, my front door slightly open. My garden looked like a storm had hit it. I sat on the back step with my coffee and stared at the wreckage. My knees ached, my chest felt hollow, but I didn't move. I just sat there until the sun was high. That day, I made 2 phone calls. First was to my lawyer. I hadn't touched my will since my husband died. I told her I wanted to make changes. She asked if it was urgent. I said yes. I told her I wanted everything. House, land, savings. Moved into a trust for Michelle and her girls. Nothing for Jared. Not a cent. Second call was to a man named Clark Danner. He runs a small private security firm in town. I hired him to install cameras, front porch, back gate, even inside the kitchen. I told him it was for family safety, and he didn't ask questions. He had it all done by that evening. The next few weeks were quiet, which made me uneasy. Jared didn't call, didn't text. Then Michelle came over one afternoon. She looked pale, nervous. She handed me a piece of paper, an email Jared had sent her. It was full of threats. He accused her of turning me against him, said she was stealing his inheritance. Told her he'd make sure she watched everything burn. I told her not to worry. I had a plan. I started collecting things. Every voicemail he left. Every text with insults or threats. I printed out the emails, saved copies on a USB drive. I made 2 folders. One I kept in my desk. The other I gave to Michelle, just in case something happened to me. But that wasn't the seed I planted. That wasn't the real plan. The real plan started with his finances. I knew Jared was in debt. He'd ruined his credit years ago. What he didn't know was that I still had access to one of the old joint accounts we opened when he was fresh out of high school. He never bothered closing it. He assumed it had been emptied years ago. I left a small balance there, just enough to keep it open. I started transferring small sums of money into it, always from his old email address, which I had the password for. I left a trail that made it look like he was hiding money from the state, while still collecting unemployment. He'd been bragging to neighbors about working under the table, how he had a system no one could touch. I made sure the right people heard about that. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. He came back one night, a full month after the garden incident. It was nearly midnight. I woke up to banging on the front door. I checked the camera feed. It was him.
Drunk again.
Yelling my name. "I know what you're doing," he screamed. "You think you're smart? You think you can turn my own sister against me?" I didn't answer. I just hit record. He threw a rock at the window, cracked the glass, kicked at the door until his foot went through the bottom panel. I called the police. By the time they arrived, he was gone. They filed a report, but didn't arrest him. Said it was a family matter. I knew then I'd have to go further. He hadn't learned anything yet. He still thought he was untouchable. Still thought I was the same mom who'd cook him breakfast no matter how cruel he got. But I wasn't her anymore. This time, I was ready to teach him what it meant to lose everything, slowly, carefully, piece by piece. The way he made me watch my garden die. What I did next turned his world upside down. A week after the broken door incident, I got a call from a woman named Teresa. She introduced herself quietly, said she used to date Jared. I didn't recognize the name. She told me they'd been seeing each other off and on for the last year. She found my number in his phone and called because something felt off. "He talks about you like you ruined his life," she said. But then I found a folder in his closet, full of stuff about you and your house. My heart dropped. She emailed me photos of what she found. Pages from my late husband's will, copies of property tax statements, even a map of my backyard with a red X marked near the old shed. Notes written in the margins, safe, and tools. She also found 3 keys taped to the back of the folder. "I don't know what he was planning," Teresa said, "but it scared me." I left him that night. That map confirmed something I hadn't dared believe. He wasn't just trying to hurt me emotionally. He was planning something physical. Maybe to steal from me. Maybe worse. That X near the shed? That's where I kept my husband's lockbox. Inside were documents, bonds, titles. The kind of things a desperate man might sell. I replaced everything in that box with copies and worthless decoys. The originals went into a safety deposit box the next morning. Then I called Michelle, told her everything. We sat down at my kitchen table, just like we used to when the kids were small. I showed her the photos, the map, the threats. She didn't say much, just listened. When I was done, she looked me in the eye and said, "We have to stop him. For good." That's when we made a choice. We contacted Jared's probation officer. Yes, he had one. From an old DUI in 2022 that he never mentioned. He was supposed to stay sober and out of trouble to avoid jail time. I handed over everything, texts, emails, the police report, even the voice recording from the night he kicked my door in. They opened a new case. But Jared somehow got wind of it. Maybe from a mutual friend. Because that same week, he filed something shocking. He tried to declare me mentally unfit. He told the court I was senile, paranoid, possibly violent. Claimed I was having hallucinations, that I was sabotaging him due to untreated grief. He even brought up the garden, said I talked to flowers like people. He wanted emergency control over my finances and property. Michelle, and I couldn't believe it. But I had one thing he didn't prove. Videos, photos, witnesses. A doctor's report showing I was sound of mind. The court tossed his petition out in minutes. But it wasn't over. Jared had just exposed how far he'd go and how twisted his mind had become. I wasn't just planting a seed anymore. I was digging a grave, and it was almost time for him to fall in. After the court dismissed his claim, Jared disappeared for a while. No calls. No late-night visits.
No threats.
Just silence. At first, I didn't trust it. I kept checking the cameras, sleeping with my phone by my bed. I even started locking my bedroom door at night, something I'd never done in this house. But weeks passed. Then a month. I started breathing easier. My garden began to grow back.
Slowly.
Michelle helped replant the peonies. Her girls painted little stones to mark the rows. I even caught a hummingbird near the feeder one morning. It almost felt like life was returning. Then one Thursday morning in April, 2 detectives showed up at my door. They said Jared had been arrested. Not for what he did to me, but for something bigger. Apparently, while hiding out, he tried to pawn some stolen construction tools from a job site in Madison County. A neighbor had security footage of him breaking into the trailer. When the cops caught him, he had drugs in the glove box. Turns out, he'd been using meth. That explained the paranoia, the rage, the shaking hands. They asked me if I wanted to testify in court about the threats and break-ins. I said yes. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about the truth, letting the world see who he really was. I told the court everything. I showed them the pictures, the broken door, the messages to Michelle. I played the audio where he screamed, "I'll take everything you love." I watched him sit there at the defendant's table, head down, not looking at me. His lawyer tried to paint it like a troubled son lashing out, but the evidence spoke louder. The judge gave him 3 years in state prison for the theft and drug charges. With his past record, he wasn't getting out early. He stared at me once when they let him away. Not with hate. Not even anger. Just emptiness. And that was the real punishment. Because while he sat in a prison cell, I rebuilt what mattered. My garden bloomed again. Bigger than ever. I added a new bench, one with my husband's name carved into it. Michelle brought over the girls every weekend. We planted a cherry tree together. The cameras stayed up. So did the new locks. I updated my will again. This time, I added a final clause. Jared could contest nothing. If he tried, everything would go to a charity for abused women and families. That part felt right. Like a full circle. And me? I forgave him. Not because he deserved it, but because I needed to. I needed the space in my heart for things that grow. He took my peace once. I made sure he could never touch it again. That was the seed I planted. And it bloomed exactly the way I needed it to.